Hello and welcome to the Hispanic Society Museum and Library. My name is Sophia Neich and I work in the museum's External Affairs Department. This month we will be honoring the contributions of Georgiana Goddard King, an art historian, university professor, and an advocate for women in higher education. A pioneer in the scholarship of medieval Spain and its monuments, King dedicated herself to a period in Spain's history which had little been studied. She was a woman ahead of her times, and her interest in a number of disciplines led her to develop the most innovative of research methods. Thank you for joining us in celebrating the women of the Hispanic Society.
Georgiana Goddard King, or Gigi, as she liked being called, was one of the most important historians of medieval Spanish art and literature, and the first American woman to dedicate herself to its study. A traveler ahead of her times, she was the first to visit remote locations on the Iberian Peninsula in search of its monuments and their history. But once more, we find ourselves with the case of another female figure, forgotten and overshadowed by a history written by men, in which King appears to have no place. Her pioneering work remains forgotten even today, and perhaps the factors that contributed to this were not only due to being a woman, but because her personality, the methodology of her work, and her ideas were extremely innovative for her time. Very original was her interest in studying the medieval period of the Iberian Peninsula, at a time during which few historians were interested in this epoch. Unique also was her search for finding the connections and influences among the artistic styles of diverse European cities that were linked by pilgrimage routes, much like that of the Camino de Santiago. She was also a pioneer when it came to writing, having a style and manner of expressing ideas that were guided by a new philosophy in which literature, history, art, and anthropology were studied simultaneously. As part of this interdisciplinary approach, poetry served as an exceptional tool that could be used to study society in a historic time or place. Her fascination with this led her to translate poems by 15th century playwright Juan de la Encina, and in 1921 to publish a study on a 16th century work by Gil Vicente, the play of the Sibyl Cassandra, as both de la Encina and Vicente are viewed as the fathers of Iberian drama. King's originality also includes a great interest in photography, so much that she considered it a necessity for research and study. With the help of photography, the researcher could stop depending on the human eye or on memory at the moment of gathering research materials. Photographs became graphical documents of high quality and precision when it came time to reproducing architectural elements and artistic objects. They could also serve as eyewitness accounts for future researchers and at the same time as an immeasurable source of information for conservators, documenting an object's original appearance before modifications took place or before the disappearance of monuments and artistic objects. King began her career as a professor at private schools for women and continued on to Bryn Mawr College, where she founded its Department of Art History in 1913. It was within this department that courses in Spanish art were taught for the first time in the United States. Perhaps King would not have been relegated to the past had she chosen positions with more notoriety at other institutions, yet she devoted herself in body and soul to Bryn Mawr College for Women, from where she graduated and completed studies in philosophy, English literature, ancient Greek, and political science. This university was the place where she could foment a woman's right to receive a college education, and where she would share opinions and challenges with other female academics, among them the university's president, Martha Carey Thomas, whose portrait was painted by John Singer Sargent. Figures like Thomas and the early feminist Gertrude Stein were role models that inspired King's personal life and work ideology. King's dedication toward a little-known period in the history and art of the peninsula, alongside a love of poetry and literature, and her interest in photography, made King the ideal candidate to join the group of experts at the Hispanic Society and without a doubt the perfect ideological soulmate to Huntington, whom she met in 1912. King made use of the Hispanic Society's library collection on many occasions, and her continuous visits are identifiable through the Hispanic Society's records, which show her spending entire days at the library. Huntington offered King a position at the museum, but her profound vocation for teaching, coupled with her devotion to Bryn Mawr College, led her to refuse the offer. This gesture in no way affected the friendship between them, and Huntington continued to financially support her research travels and assist her with the necessary contacts, bureaucratic paperwork, and passports that would facilitate her work abroad. Huntington personally took on the role of publishing the results of King's investigations, and in 1919, the Hispanic Society, in collaboration with Bryn Mawr, published various volumes on Spanish art, illustrated with the photographs taken by King and her travel companion, Edith H. Lober. Due to Huntington's strong interest in these photographs, a copy of them was kept at the Hispanic Society at the disposal of its researchers, and they were also utilized by the curators of the Hispanic Society, such as, for example, in a study by Beatrice Prosky, titled Spanish Details in the Gothic Architecture of Sicily. Much before the well-known 1923 publication of Arthur Kingsley Porter's monograph titled Romanesque Sculpture of the Pilgrimage Roads, King had already been writing articles for years on castles, abbeys, and medieval churches in Spain, such as, for example, her work, Some Churches in Galicia, from 1910. The Hispanic Society had also edited some of her most important works prior to 1923, like George Edmund Street, unpublished notes and reprinted papers from 1916, and her book, A Brief Account of the Military Orders in Spain, from 1921. And yet, despite this, it is Kingsley Porter who is considered the initiator and medievalist par excellence of Spanish art and architecture during that time period. Perhaps the words of Madeline Cavinas, one of King's biographers, help to explain some of the reasons for this. Medieval Spanish art had become a crowded field in King's last years, and there was little room for an old lady who was not one of the boys. As the history of art history began to be written, it was even forgotten that King had gone to Spain first. Erwin Panofsky and James Ackerman put King with Chandler Post and Porter and all the others, forgetting she was their forerunner. This example manifests the great importance that Huntington's support procured for the historian to carry out her investigations. In addition, it demonstrates the respect that Huntington felt since early on for King's work. Thank you for joining us in listening to this short presentation of Georgiana Goddard King and the contributions she made to the study of medieval Spanish art and architecture. We hope you enjoyed listening, and please join us again next time.